Over an hour to go and still nothing from Phil Bodkin. He's taking his sweet time getting up to speed.
He might be waiting for the rubber to go down, but watching the field fly through T12, he's already losing valuable data.
Still waiting for Ben Naden to show his hand. He's been sitting in the pits while everyone else tears through T8.
Nadine finally lays down a banker, and that 114 flat puts him right in the mix at P2.
Wallstrom is still missing from the timing screen. Not a single lap to his name yet.
He's losing the chance to find a rhythm through T9, while the track temp is still perfect.
Bodkin finally finds his rhythm, jumping to the top with a 1 minute, 13 seconds, and 3 milliseconds.
Look at how he's attacking the curbs through Boundary Street. That's where he's finding the time over the rest of the pack.
Wallstrom is still waiting to put a time on the board, watching the field hustle through T6 from the pit wall. Bodkin is setting the benchmark for everyone else to chase as he flicks the car through T12. Wallstrom finally gets a number on the board, but he's over 2 seconds off Bodkin's pace.
He's really struggling for rotation at T3. He looks like he's fighting massive understeer every time he turns in.
Bodkin is holding firm at the top, looking comfortable while the others scramble to bridge that gap. Wallstrom finds a bit more pace, shaving nearly a second off his previous best.
Much cleaner through the mid-corner phase, he's clearly found that bit of grip he was missing earlier.
Phil's last lap was 1:15.381, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
Phil is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Wallstrom is really pushing the limits now, trying to get more out of that second sector.
He's overcooking the entry into T2, you can see the car dancing on the edge of adhesion, but that's what it takes to find the time.
Bodkin remains unchallenged at the sharp end, looking every bit the driver to beat this morning.
Wallstrom is going to need to find another half second or more if he wants to challenge for the front row.
Bodkin shows no signs of letting up, keeping that 1 minute 13 seconds and 3 milliseconds locked in at the top of the pile.
He's got the confidence to lean on the car, which is exactly where you want to be before qualifying starts.
Wallstrom is really wrestling with the car through T13. He needs to smooth out those inputs if he wants to climb higher. Bodkin just took a massive amount of curb through T9, but he kept it clean.
That's the kind of commitment you only have when you're feeling completely dialed into the chassis.
Wallstrom's finding a bit more stability as he navigates T11, though he's still hunting for that last bit of turn-in response. Bodkin just found another couple of tenths, dipping into the 1 minute 13 seconds and 0 milliseconds range.
He's really stretching his legs now. That's a serious pace to be setting in practice.
Wallstrom is still stuck in the mid-114s, while the gap to the front continues to grow.
He's far too aggressive on the throttle at the exit of T7, just lighting up the rear tires and scrubbing off all that momentum.
Bodkin is absolutely flying. He's just dropped into the 112S and put even more daylight between himself and the rest of the field. Wallstrom is struggling to find more. He's still sitting 3 positions back and looking frustrated.
He needs to stop overdriving it. He's trying to force the car to do things the setup just won't allow right now.
Bodkin is relentless, staying out to bank more data while he holds that commanding lead.
At this rate, he's not just finding speed, he's demoralizing the rest of the field before they even get to qualifying.
Still nothing from Dominic Fauvargue. He's been parked in the garage for nearly half the session now.
It's a bold strategy, but he's missing out on the track evolution while the temperature is actually cooperating.
Bodkin continues to set the standard, looking incredibly composed as he maintains that top spot on the timing screen. Fauvargue is finally out on track, gingerly working the car through the T12 complex for his first run of the session. Bodkin is treating Boundary Street like a playground, threading that needle with absolute precision.
It's textbook stuff. He's keeping the car so stable mid-corner, which is exactly why he's consistently finding those tenths.
Fauvargue is finally up to speed, starting his first timed effort of the session.
He needs to be careful not to rush this. The track might have changed since the others did their initial runs.
Bodkin just keeps clicking them off, carving through T12 like he's on rails.
He's barely correcting the steering at all, which tells me that car is perfectly balanced for these conditions.
Fauvargue hits the ground running with a 1 minute, 14 seconds, and 0 milliseconds, putting himself straight into P3 after that quiet start. Bodkin is pushing the absolute limits through T10. You can see the dust kicking up as he clips that inside curb.
Fauvargue is finding a little more rhythm now, shaving a few hundredths off in T5 as he gets used to the grip levels.
Bodkin is just relentless out there, putting on a masterclass through T7.
He's carrying so much entry speed, but he's still got the car rotated perfectly for the exit. That's why he's sitting almost 2 seconds clear.
Fovargo is getting more confident through T3, but he's still got a mountain to climb if he wants to catch the leaders. Wallstrom has been bumped down to 4th by Fovargo, and he's going to need to find a new gear to stay relevant here.
Fovargo is really attacking the apex at T2, but he's carrying a bit too much mid-corner speed, which is forcing him to wait on the throttle.
Wallstrom is still hovering in that P4 spot, struggling to find any meaningful improvement.
He looks like he's lost his way with the setup. He's just not able to lean on the front end like he needs to.
Still no sign of Nigel Walters on the timesheets. The pit garage remains completely quiet for him. Wallstrom is heading back into the pits. It looks like he's calling it a day on this run.
Smart move. He's just burning through fuel and heat cycles without finding any extra pace right now.
Walters finally breaks cover, easing his car out through T3 for his first exploration of the circuit. Wallstrom is back out, trying to reset his head and get a better run through T1.
He needs to focus on his braking point there. He's been shallow on turn-in all session, and it's killing his exit speed.
That is an impressive opening statement from Walters, jumping straight into second place with a 1 minute 13 seconds and 2 milliseconds through the T2 complex. Nadine's being pushed down to third by that fast lap from Walters, and he's really fighting the rear end through T9, trying to respond. Fovarg finds himself shuffled down to 4th as the pace heats up, and the gap to the front is starting to look a bit daunting. Wallstrom slipping further down the order, still struggling to find a rhythm through T3. Jareth Hallam is still the mystery man of the session, keeping his cards close to his chest in the pits. Nadine has been pushed down to 4th now, and he needs to find another few tenths if he wants to stay in the hunt with the leaders. Wallstrom is still battling that car through T9, looking really loose on the exit.
He's putting way too much steering lock in, just scrubbing the tires and killing any chance of a clean lap.
Fovarg finds a massive chunk of time, jumping back into 3rd with a 1 minute 13 seconds and 3 milliseconds as he powers through T5. Wallstrom finally chips away at his time, dipping into the 1 minute 14 seconds and 2 milliseconds S as he navigates the T6 hairpin. Hallam finally breaks his silence on the board, slotting into 6th as he negotiates T4. Nadine improves his personal best, but he's still sitting 4th, unable to quite match that blistering pace from Bodkin and Walters.
He's finding a bit more stability under braking, but he's losing all that ground on the mid-corner apex speed.
Fovarg is really hunting down Walters now. His latest run through Boundary Street looks razor sharp.
He's keeping the car much tidier than he was earlier. Clearly, the setup changes they made in the pits are starting to pay dividends.
Hallam is still fighting to get comfortable, struggling with a bit of a snap oversteer through T10.
That's the confidence killer right there. If the car doesn't feel planted on that mid-corner bump, you're never going to commit to the throttle early.
Wallstrom is still hovering in 5th, and at this stage he's running out of time to find that elusive extra second. Nadine has just pipped him for 3rd, so Fovargu's going to have to find another gear if he wants to stay in the top 3. Wallstrom is really trying to hustle the car through T2, but he's still looking a bit ragged.
He's missing the apex by a few inches every single lap. That's a massive amount of track length he's throwing away.
Walters just smashed through the 113 barrier, putting himself firmly in the mix with that 1 minute 12 seconds and 9 milliseconds.
That puts him within 6/10 of Bodkin. Things are finally starting to tighten up at the front.
Huge improvement from Hallam. He finds over a second to jump into 5th as he clips the apex at T12. Walters is really leaning on the car through T13, trying to squeeze every last bit of rotation out of that setup. Finally, we see Chris Stokes joining the fray, easing his car through the T12 complex for his first proper look at the track. Hallam is chipping away at it, finding another few tenths to tighten the gap to the leaders.
He's definitely getting more confident. You can see him trail braking much deeper into the turns now.
Walters is really testing the limits of the T2 curbs. He's barely keeping all 4 wheels inside the white lines. Hallam is really finding his flow through Boundary Street, looking much more composed than he did 10 minutes ago.
He's finally trusting the rear end of the car, which is letting him get back on the power so much earlier on the exit.
Stokes puts a time on the board, but he's already over a second off the pace in 7th.
He looks like he's playing it safe for now. That's a lot of margin he's leaving on the table through the technical sections.
Nadine finding some serious pace there, carving through T6 to lock down 3rd place.
He's finally nailed the entry speed. He stopped fighting the understeer and is actually letting the car rotate naturally now.
Walters is really putting the pressure on, squeezing every inch of track out of that Boundary Street run.
He's got the car dancing on the limit, but he's perfectly composed. That's the kind of confidence you need to challenge Bodkin.
Hallam's been bumped down to 6th by Nadine's charge, and he's going to need to find a serious turn of pace to fight his way back into the top 5. Nadine finding another few hundredths through T12, though it's not enough to move him out of 4th.
He's really struggling with Tyree Degg already. He's having to chase the car with constant steering inputs just to hold the line.
Walters is holding steady in 2nd, but he needs to find a way to shave those final few tenths if he wants to take the fight to Bodkin.
He's consistent, but he's plateaued. I'd like to see him experiment with a slightly different line through the slower corners to shake things up.
Wallstrom is still scrapping for grip through T3, and slipping further down the order to 7th doesn't help his momentum. Nadine's really pushing hard on the brakes into T1, trying to claw back that tiny gap to the top 3. Fovarga is sitting in 5th now, having been nudged out of the top 4 by the intense pace of the guys ahead. Hallam is really working the steering through T8, but he looks like he's just missing the rotation needed to keep pace with the leaders. Wallstrom finally breaks into the 113S, though he's still sitting 7th and looking for more from the car in the T7 sector. Hallam is starting to slip down the order. As the track evolves, he needs a clean lap soon to stay within reach of the top 5. Sten's last lap was a 1:14.532, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
Sten is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
David Constable Barry makes his presence felt, slotting into P6 with a tidy first effort. Fovarg is really hunting that apex at T9, trying to maintain every bit of momentum.
He's keeping the car incredibly stable, which is impressive given how much he's asking of those tires through the turn.
Nadine's flirting with disaster through T8. That car is dancing on the edge of a snap.
He's got the rear end moving around a bit too much for my liking. He needs to settle that down if he wants to stay in the 13s.
Constable Barry is on a charge. He clips T3 perfectly to leapfrog Naden and claim 4th. Walters is really pinning his hopes on this sector, threading the needle through Boundary Street to keep that P2 spot secure. Wallstrom just clocked 1:15.842. Can they improve on this lap?
Sten is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Constable Barry has been pushed back to 5th by a resurgent Nadine, and he's really fighting the car through T3, trying to answer back.
He's over-rotating on entry, He needs to dial back the initial turn-in, or he's going to burn through his rear rubber long before the race finish.
Ben's last lap was a 1:13.710, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
As the session progresses, Ben Nadine is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Constable Barry is really scrubbing the front tires through T2 here. He's pushing hard, but maybe a little too hard to find that extra 10th. Wallstrom is drifting further back, stuck in 8th and looking completely unable to find the pace of the leaders.
He's fighting the setup, and at this point, he's just wasting laps. He needs to pull in and rethink his geometry before he loses any more ground.
Ullum is trying to muscle it through T7, but he's just not getting the rotation he needs to carry that speed through the exit. Nigel just clocked to 19.246. Can they improve on this lap? Where did that come from? Stokes jumps all the way to 4th with a 1 minute, 13 seconds, and 0 milliseconds. Absolute perfection through T5.
That was a masterclass in weight transfer. He's finally got the front end fighting, and he's using that confidence to carry serious momentum through the mid-corner.
Wallstrom is still wrestling with the car on the brakes into T1, and he's really starting to look like a man out of ideas. Where on earth did Moll come from? He just slammed a 1 minute, 12 seconds, and 9 milliseconds onto the board to jump straight into 3rd place. Fovarg is flying. He's just gone 4th fastest and is looking incredibly aggressive through T7.
He's absolutely dancing on the throttle there, using every inch of that exit curb to keep the revs high. Now, several laps into the session, Jareth Hallam looks to refine their line and timing.
Dominic's last lap was a 1:34.087, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
As the session progresses, Dominic Fovarg is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Maul is absolutely on a heater. He just found another couple of tenths to leap into second place. Stokes has been shuffled down to 6th as the front runners turn up the wick, and the times are getting incredibly tight.
He needs to find that extra gear again, because at this level, 4 tenths is the difference between a grid spot and being buried in the midfield.
Cormac is struggling to get the car turned in at T5. He's currently sitting 10th and looking like he's got a real handful.
He's definitely fighting some mid-corner understeer. You can see him waiting for the front end to hook up before he can even think about getting back on the power.
Maul is looking incredibly committed through T11, just daring the car to let go under him.
He's got that car so balanced on the nose, it's allowing him to point it exactly where he wants without any of that scrubbing we're seeing from the rest of the field.
Dominic's last lap was a 1:13.543, aiming to shave off some seconds here. Cormac finds a little bit more time, but he's still anchored in 10th and needs a clean sector if he's going to climb out of the bottom half.
He's still too timid on the initial turn-in. He needs to trust the arrow and get that nose pinned to the apex earlier if he wants to see a 113.
Walters finally finds a bit more, scrubbing another few hundredths off to take P3.
He's got the bit between his teeth now, but he's going to need a much bigger jump to put any heat on Maul and Bodkin.
David's last lap was a 1:13.724, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
David is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Walters is pushing the boundaries of adhesion at Boundary Street, looking desperate to find that last bit of speed to bridge the gap to the front two. Constable Barry improves his time, but he's still stuck in 6th as the pace at the front keeps moving away from him. Mac McFarquhar is on their practice out lap, warming up the tires.
Mac McFarquhar will be testing the limits, making sure everything's in sync for the faster laps to come. Competing at VVS for over 5 years now, make Martin one of the veterans.
Fovarg is really attacking the curbs through T2, trying to find every millisecond as we head into these final 10 minutes. David's last lap was a 1:13.233, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
As the session progresses, David Constable Barry is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Walters is really turning the screw now. That 1 minute 12 seconds and 7 milliseconds through T9 shows he is absolutely finding his limit. Finally, Mac McFarquhar decides to join the party, tipping it into T11 for his first exploratory lap.
He's left it incredibly late. He'll have to get up to speed instantly if he wants to set a representative time before the clock runs out.
Dominic Fovarg has set a best lap time of 1:12.956 so far. Robert just clocked 1:13.679. Can they improve on this lap?
Robert is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Constable Barry is pushing the limits through T4, trying to muscle his way back into that top 5.
He's being a bit too aggressive with the steering there. He needs to let the car settle on the exit if he wants to carry that speed down the straight.
Martin has been competing at VVS for over 5 years now, which makes him one of the veterans on the grid.
Always nice to see him compete. He has really proven to be a great driver over the years.
Dominic Fovarg has set a best lap time of 1:12.956 so far.
Dominic is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Robert's last lap was a 3:00.916, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
As the session progresses, Robert Cormack is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Wallstrom has slipped all the way down to P11, and time is rapidly running out for him to rescue anything from this session. Neil Constable Barry is putting in a solid effort through T11, currently sitting 8th and looking for more pace in these closing minutes. Stokes finds himself back in 7th, and with under 5 minutes on the clock, he needs a massive final push to climb that ladder. Naden finds a handy gap in the traffic to jump into 6th with a 1 minute 12 seconds and 9 milliseconds, right as we enter the final act. Cormac is giving it everything he's got through Boundary Street, but he's still struggling to crack the top 10.
He's far too hesitant on the throttle there. He needs to commit to the line early, or he's just going to stay buried in the pack.
Stokes is really up against it now, with only 3 minutes left. He's got to find a clear window if he wants to improve on that P7. Wallstrom is still wrestling with the car through T13, and at this late stage, he's just looking to salvage some pride. David's last lap was a 1:13.796, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
As the session progresses, David Constable Barry is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Wallstrom just clocked 11:58.027. Can they improve on this lap?
Sten is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Dominic Fovarg has set a best lap time of 1:12.676 so far. McFarquhar is right at the back with a 1 minute 16 seconds and 2 milliseconds. He's going to be disappointed with that opening effort.
He's basically been a passenger all session. Didn't look like he had any confidence in the front end at all.
Nadine's hammering through T3 on his final lap, looking to squeeze every last thousandth out of this session before the flag drops. Mac McFarquhar has set a best lap time of 1:16.209 so far. Nadine is really pushing his luck through T2, looking like he's trying to force a final gain as the clock winds down.
He's carrying a bit too much speed into the apex, and you can see him fighting the steering to keep that back end from stepping out.
windy day here at Townsville. The cars are going to be dancing on those bumpy concrete streets today.
Maul is taking his sweet time getting out there. He's giving away nearly a quarter of the session before he's even turned a wheel through turn 1.
Constable Barry finally rolling out of the pits, but with barely 5 minutes on the clock, he's got a mountain to climb if he wants a clean banker lap. Stokes is only just leaving the lane now, with less than 5 minutes remaining.
He's under serious pressure to hook up a perfect lap immediately. No time for a warm-up tour here.
Still nothing on the board for Maul, and he's burning daylight with every second he stays in the pit box.
That is a serious banker from Maul. A 1 minute 12 seconds and 9 milliseconds puts a target on his back that the rest of the field has to chase down now.
Stokes still hasn't tripped the timing beam. He's taking a massive risk waiting this long.
He's likely waiting for the track to rubber in or trying to avoid the traffic, but he's playing with fire.
Nadine is looking to chip away at that gap to Maul. He is already showing a green sector on the dash.
Wallstrom is still sitting in the pits. He's leaving himself barely enough time for one hot lap before the flag drops.
Maul is finding even more time through turn 8. He's 2/10 up on his own provisional pole pace. Neil is digging deep here, 7/10 up on his previous best as he navigates turn 9.
He's really hustling the car, carrying a lot of speed on entry, but that's a tricky section to get right without touching the wall.
A solid improvement for Neil. He snags fourth and moves himself into the thick of the fight with just over 2 minutes to go. McFarquhar is finding some serious rhythm down Boundary Street. We're nearly 3/4 of a second up on his previous best.
He needs that pace. He's right on the edge of falling out of the top 10 if he doesn't find more time on this circuit.
Fovarg is sitting pretty in second, just over a 10th off the benchmark set by Maul.
He's got the pace, but he's right at the limit of the car. If he wants that pole, he has to be willing to clip those apexes a little closer.
Neil is finding another 10th, creeping closer to his personal best, but he needs to find a few more to break back into the top 5. Another slight improvement for Neil. He jumps up to P6.
Every millisecond counts at this stage, but he's still over half a second off the pace at the front. He needs a monster final sector to climb any higher.
McFarcar is right on the bubble in 8th with under 40 seconds remaining.
He needs to stop leaving time on the table. If he doesn't pull a miracle out on this final run, he's going to be looking at a mid-pack start.
Wallstrom is chipping away at his time, showing green sectors as the clock ticks down toward 0.
He waited until the absolute last moment to head out, and he's going to need every bit of that late track evolution to vault up the order.
It's not happening for Neil. This time around, the delta shows he's actually a fraction slower through turn 8 as the flag prepares to drop. Maul is absolutely flying through turn 8, potentially finding another quarter of a second on his own pole time as the clock hits 0.
If he crosses that line with that delta, he's putting this session well and truly out of reach for the rest of the field. Cormac is giving it a proper go through turn 6. He's up over a 10th, but he's running out of road to make that count for the grid.
A massive jump for Neil Constable-Berry there. He's up into 4th and keeping the pressure on the leaders. Fovargu is finding rhythm. He's nearly 2/10 up on his best and looking to snatch that top spot away.
He's finding time in the braking zones, but he has to be careful not to lock up. One mistake now, and that qualifying effort is for nothing.
Walters is putting the hammer down on Boundary Street, shaving over a 10th off his best and breathing down Fovarg's neck for that front row spot. Cormac looks like he's lost the rear end into turn 1. He's 7/10 off his pace, and his session is effectively falling apart.
Wallstrom is chipping away, but at this rate he's only going to find a handful of hundredths, which isn't going to be enough to climb out of that 8th place spot.
The lights are coming up at Townsville. The air is dead still, and the tension on the grid is absolutely palpable.
These guys are just trying to keep their heart rates down before the launch, but once those lights go out, it's going to be absolute chaos into turn 1.
Fovarg is sitting right in the middle of that front row, looking to snatch the lead before they even hit the first braking zone.
He's got the pace, but in a Pro-Am setup like that, he needs a clean getaway to avoid getting swallowed up by the pack behind.
Constable-Berry lines up 3rd, and you have to wonder if the AM-class pilot is going to play it safe or dive straight into the deep end with the front 2.
3rd is a dangerous place to be. If he doesn't get the launch right, he's going to have a mirror full of hungry drivers looking to capitalize on his hesitation.
Stokes sits in 5th, and that pro-class pedigree means he knows exactly how to bully his way through traffic.
He'll be watching Fovarg and Constable-Berry like a hawk, waiting for them to trip over each other so he can pick up the pieces.
Nadine completes the top 6, and he's going to need a perfect start to keep the pro drivers behind him from turning up the heat immediately.
He's in the thick of it now. The draft from the 5 cars ahead is going to be massive. He just needs to stay tucked in and keep his composure.
Cormac is back in 8th, but with a short run to the first corner, he might be able to slice through the middle if the guys ahead get tangled up.
He's far enough back that he can see the potential gaps forming before they actually happen. But he's got to resist the urge to lunge into a closing door.
McFarcar back in 10th, not where a pro wants to be, but he's got a clear view of the inevitable mess ahead.
He'll be keeping his nose clean on the first lap, letting everyone else burn their tires while he hunts for a way to climb that leaderboard.
David Constable-Berry, starting from 11th, he's got a big job ahead if he wants to catch his relative up in 3rd.
Poleman Mall has the clear track ahead, which is exactly where you want to be to dictate the pace and avoid the inevitable first lap carnage.
prying at his gearbox. Mall has held the point through the opening sequence, but the pressure from the pack behind is already immense.
He's driving defensive lines to be safe, but he needs to settle into a rhythm quickly if he wants to break that initial toe.
Stokes has already found a way past Constable Barry. He is carving through this field with intent.
Smart move from Chris. He spotted that gap opening up and just slotted the car in without lifting. That is confidence for you.
Stokes is glued to the rear wing of the car in front. He is not letting that podium spot slip away.
Big gain for David, picking up 2 spots already. He's clearly found some grip where others are struggling to find traction.
David's found another one, moving up into 8th, but he's got nearly 0.6 of a second of breathing room over Cormac for now. Nadine is hounding the back of Cormac, closing to within 0.3 as they scrap for 9th place with plenty of racing still to go. Nadine has just snatched 9th away from Cormac, and with only 0.1 of a second between them, this is far from settled. A massive reversal for Nadine. He's dropped 2 spots down to 11th and is suddenly nearly 4 seconds back from Cormac.
Looks like he might have caught a curb wrong or just lost the rear. In these cars, one slide is all it takes to lose the toe and drop you right out of the fight.
Cormac is looking lively through turn 8, holding Wallstrom to 0.7 as he tries to reel him back in. Cormac is staying within striking distance of Wallstrom, the gap holding steady at 0.7 as they navigate this sector.
He's keeping his nose clean, which is exactly the right approach. You don't want to burn your tires this early by overdriving the car in dirty air.
McFarcar has clawed his way up to 7th and is starting to pull a full second clear of the train behind him.
He's found some clean air, and you can see the lap times dropping. That's the Pro Class experience showing through as he manages the gap perfectly.
Wallstrom is starting to reel him in slightly, shaving 0.1 off that lead to bring the gap down to 0.9. Fogarg is putting everything he has into this pursuit, sticking within 0.4 of Mall as they really start to push the limits of these cars.
He is sniffing out a mistake here. When you're that close, you're looking for any sign of understeer from the leader to force an opening into the next heavy braking zone.
Mall just eked that gap out to half a second, Fogarg losing just a fraction of a heartbeat as they navigate the technical sections.
It is classic cat and mouse. Fogarg is likely backing off just a touch to keep his front tires from overheating in that turbulent air.
Cormac is absolutely relentless. He has closed that gap to Wallstrom down to 0.6 now.
He is finding his groove, but that is the danger zone because being this close for too long is going to start killing his front grip.
Cormac has just pulled a brilliant move on Wallstrom to steal 8th position, and he is already glued right to his gearbox. Fogarg is putting on a masterclass in pressure, sitting just 0.4 back from the leader as they thread through the T7 complex. No change to the gap. Fogarg is still stuck in the wash at 0.4, unable to find that final push to challenge for the lead.
He is waiting for Mole to miss an apex, but honestly, the leader hasn't put a wheel wrong yet. That's the kind of consistency that wins championships.
Cormac is wasting no time. He has set his sights on McFarquhar and has trimmed the deficit to under a second. Fovarg is right on the gearbox now, 3/10 the gap as they work their way through the T3 section. It is a stalemate at the front for now. Fovarg holding steady at 3/10, but just can't find the momentum to pull alongside. Cormac has officially moved up to 7th, and he is hunting down McFarquhar, with the gap now down to 8/10.
He is showing some serious pace, but he needs to make this pass stick quickly before he cooks those front tires chasing him down.
Cormac is digging deep, chipping away another 10th to put himself 7/10 off the back of McFarquhar. Fovarg has his hands full now. He's dropped away from the leader and has Walters absolutely swarming all over his rear bumper with just a 1/10 of a second in it. Total disaster for Fovarg. He's plummeted to 5th, and with Walters now leading by over 10 seconds, his podium hopes have all but evaporated in a single lap. How do racing drivers like yourself back in the day, Sky, train themselves to maintain concentration for long periods of time?
Mental training is a huge part of a driver's preparation, Hal. Techniques like meditation, visualization, and working with sports psychologists can help drivers build their mental endurance for a race.
David Constable-Berry is right on the tail of Mall as they exit the T10 section, the gap sitting at just over half a second.
He is putting the pressure on, but he has to watch his braking points here. Carry too much speed in, and he'll just invite a counter move from the pro ahead.
Mall has managed to stretch that gap out by a 10th, keeping Constable-Berry at arm's length as they fight for the final step of the podium. Cormac is hanging on to 6th by the skin of his teeth. McFarquhar is right on his gearbox and looking for any opening to snatch the spot back. A commanding performance from Robert, who has increased their lead over McFarquhar, putting them firmly in the rearview mirrors. McFarquhar is looking for a way around, keeping the pressure on at 3/10 behind Cormac as they fight to hold their line through the corners. McFarquhar has lost a huge amount of ground, tumbling back to 10th and drifting 4 seconds off the back of Cormac in a real momentum killer of a lap. Cormac is glued to Bodkin's rear wing through T11, just a single 1/10 of a second separating them in this scramble for 8th. Cormac's intensity has dipped slightly, that gap to Bodkin opening up to half a second after being right on his bumper just moments ago. Fovarg is looking to redeem his race, charging back into contention and sitting just half a second behind Constable-Berry. Fovarg is putting the hammer down, closing the gap to Constable-Berry to just 3/10 now.
He is clearly the faster car at the moment, but he needs to make sure he doesn't cook those tires, trying to force the issue before the final few laps.
Wallstrom is hunting down Neil Constable-Berry, keeping him in his sights at 7/10 as they navigate the middle of the pack. Wallstrom has lost a fraction, that gap growing to 0.8 as the struggle for grip starts to show.
He is fighting an uphill battle now. Neil Constable-Berry is defending those apexes perfectly, and Sten just doesn't have the clean air to make a rhythm.
Fovarg has fallen off the map again, dropping all the way to 9th and sitting nearly a second behind Cormac after that miserable lap time. Cormac is doing a solid job holding on to 8th, but he has his work cut out for him if he wants to close that 1 second gap to Bodkin ahead. Cormac is struggling to keep pace. The gap to Bodkin stretching out to over 1 second and 0.3 as they enter the closing stages. It has been a proper roller coaster at Townsville. The way Fovarg has been yo-yoing up and down the field is a nightmare for his pit wall.
That is just the nature of this circuit, Hal. If you lose your rhythm for even one corner, the field just swallows you whole.
I remember you telling me once that the street circuits demand more respect than the dedicated tracks. Is that what we're seeing today?
Absolutely. You don't get away with a sloppy line here without kissing a barrier or dropping 3 positions. It's brutal.
It certainly seems to be punishing the Pro-Am drivers today. Keeping that focus for 18 minutes is no small feat.
Exactly. It is about keeping the head cool when the car is dancing underneath you. The ones who stay calm are the ones we're seeing pull ahead.
Stokes is really turning the screws on the leader now, creeping within 0.6 as they hunt down that top spot.
He is in the zone, taking a slightly wider entry to get a better run onto the straight. That is a textbook way to set up a pass.
Stokes has just lost a bit of that momentum, the gap widening to 0.8 as Walters effectively shuts the door on that initial charge. Fovarg is desperately trying to claw back some pride, but he's got Cormac absolutely glued to his gearbox in the fight for 8th.
He is defending for his life, but he's making the car very wide. If he keeps taking that defensive line, he's going to lose even more time to the cars ahead.
Cormac is staying right in the slipstream, just 0.3 back from Fovarg, as this battle for 8th refuses to die down. Cormac is starting to lose touch, the gap to Fovarg growing to 0.5 second as they head into the next technical sector.
He is struggling with exit speed, and that's the one place you really can't afford to be loose on this circuit.
Fovarg has managed to pick up a spot to 7th and is starting to gap Cormac again, keeping 0.6 of breathing room between them. Fovarg is holding firm, stretching that lead over Cormac out to 0.7 now.
He's finally found his rhythm, and frankly, he's just driving cleaner than the guys behind him at this stage.
Walters is applying serious heat to the back of Stokes, cutting the deficit to 0.6 as they trade paint for the race lead. Walters has slipped back a bit, the gap to Stokes ballooning out to a full second now.
He really needed to make that move stick when he had the momentum. Now he is stuck in that dirty air, and it's going to be a real struggle to recover that time.
Fovarg is right on the gearbox of Bodkin, just 0.4 back, and looking for a way to break into the top 6. He is absolutely hounding him now. Fovarg is within 0.2 of Bodkin, and the tension is sky high.
This is the moment. Fovarg is showing better turn-in speed, If he times the exit right, he will be side by side by the next marker.
Mull has found a second wind. He is all over the back of Walters with just 0.2 of a second in it.
He is showing him a nose at every apex, trying to rattle him into a mistake. Walters has to hold his nerve here, or he is going to lose P2.
Mull is still applying relentless pressure, though that gap is nudged out to 0.3 as they battle through the technical middle sector. Bodkin has dropped to 7th and is currently looking at the rear diffuser of Fovarg, who seems to have found some extra pace in these closing minutes.
He is going to need to change his line through the complex if he wants to get a run on him. Sitting that close in the wake is just cooking his brakes.
No change to the gap, still 0.4. Bodkin is starting to look desperate as the clock ticks down.
He is missing his braking marks by a hair every time, and that's exactly how you end up in the tire wall at a place like this.
David Constable-Berry is working hard through the T3 section, trying to bridge that 0.6 gap to Mull for a shot at the podium. Constable-Berry is inching closer, shaving a 10th off that lead to sit just half a second behind Mull as they hunt for the final podium spot. Mull has lost a bit of rhythm after that sluggish last lap, finding himself 0.4 off the back of Walters now.
He is struggling with corner exit traction. You can see him fighting the rear end of the car every time he tries to put the power down.
Nadine has managed to climb all the way back up to 8th, and with a 15-second cushion, he is finally clear of the traffic behind him.
He has had a wild race, but he has settled into a rhythm now. He just needs to bring it home safely and bank those championship points.
Nadine has been under intense pressure all of a sudden, dropping to 9th and holding a razor-thin 2/10 lead over Fovarg, who is clearly back on the hunt. Mull has found his pace again, closing to within 0.2 of Walters as they approach the business end of this race.
He is clearly not settling for third. Watch his line through the next complex. He is going to try and force Walters to defend the inside.
Mull has absolutely pulled it off, snatching second place away from Walters and already putting half a second of daylight between them. Walters is not letting this go without a fight, sitting just 0.3 behind Mull as he looks to reclaim that runner-up spot.
He is overdriving the entry to try and make up the deficit, but that is only going to punish his tires even more, with this little time left on the clock.
Walters is starting to fade here, the gap to Mull stretching to 0.6 as he really struggles to find any more pace from those worn tires. Constable-Berry is smelling blood. He is closed to within 0.3 of Walters and is looking to snatch that final podium spot away. Constable-Berry is still breathing down his neck, though he's dropped back just a fraction to 0.4 as they hunt down the final podium spot. Walters is really struggling with his pace, just 0.4 now, protecting him from a charging Constable-Berry.
He is fighting an absolute handful of a car. You can see the understeer mid-corner, and he's going to be a sitting duck if he doesn't find some grip soon.
Constable Barry is right back in the mix, slicing that gap to 0.3 as the pressure on Walters reaches breaking point. No movement in the gap yet, but Constable Barry is absolutely glued to that rear wing, waiting for the slightest mistake as we edge closer to the end. Cormac is giving everything he's got, trailing Bodkin by 0.7 as he fights to break into the top 6.
He is pushing the limits, but he needs to be careful. Those tires have done a lot of work today, and they won't take much more abuse.
Cormac's charge has stalled, the gap to Bodkin growing past a second as he loses touch with the fight for 6th.
He is just overdriving the car now, asking for more rotation than the rubber can provide, and he's paying for it in lost time on the exit.
Constable Barry is still hunting that podium, keeping Walters honest at 0.3 seconds.
He is lurking like a shadow in the mirrors. If he can just force Walters to take a slightly compromised line through the next turn, he'll have the overlap he needs.
Walters is showing some real defensive grit, holding onto that 3rd spot, despite Constable Barry practically riding his rear diffuser. Stokes is in total cruise control now. With a comfortable 3-second cushion and the finish line in sight, he just needs to bring it home. Chris Stokes takes the checkered flag, an absolute masterclass in recovery after starting back in 5th. Martin Moll takes 2nd place with a fantastic race. Walters holds on to grab the final step of the podium, a massive defensive effort under immense pressure to close out the race.
He really had to work for that one. His tires were gone, but he kept his head when the heat was on, and that experience paid off.
David Constable Barry just misses out on the podium in 4th, followed closely by Neil Constable Barry and Phil Bodkin, who round out the top 6. And Fovargu crosses the line to secure 7th place after a real roller coaster of a performance today.
He showed flashes of real speed throughout the stint, but just couldn't quite find the consistency to keep himself in that lead battle.
Eighth is Sten Wallstrom. Townsville is serving up a gusty one today, and that wind whipping down the straight is going to make these cars a handful under braking.
Fovarg has done the business in qualifying, but pole position here is a long way from home with that first chicane tightening up so quickly.
Wallstrom's lined up right alongside on the front row, looking to spoil the party for the Pro-Am leader.
He's got the inside line for the start, which is exactly where you want to be when the lights go out.
Constable Barry sits in third, right in the thick of it, as the engines start to climb.
He needs a clean getaway. Get bogged down here and he'll be swallowed up by the pack behind before he even reaches the first turn.
Walters is staring at the back of that lead group from fifth, knowing he's got to stay out of trouble while the front three fight it out for space. Stokes brings the Pro pace into sixth, and you have to think he's already eyeing up a move on the AM cars ahead.
He's the one to watch off the line, honestly. The pros know how to manage that clutch release better than anyone. Mull is buried back in seventh, and he'll be desperate to get around those AM cars early before the leaders check out.
Nadine completes the top 8, right in the middle of a hungry Pro-Am mix, as we wait for these lights to turn red. Cormac rounds out the top 10, looking to stay tidy and pick up pieces if there's any contact up front.
Mid-pack at Townsville is a game of survival, especially in these junior formulas where the mirrors get full of gearbox very quickly.
And they are away. A clean start for Fovar. But Wallstrom is fighting back hard on the inside line.
Big movement from Stokes further back. He's already carved his way through the middle of the pack.
Constable Barry is holding firm in third, keeping those front two in his sights.
Smart driving. He's just letting the front row burn their tires fighting each other while he waits for a mistake.
Wait, where did Stokes come from? He's already up into third.
That was clinical. He caught Constable Barry napping on the exit and just muscled his way through.
Stokes has put on a masterclass in these first few turns to snatch third away.
He didn't just find a gap, he forced one. That's the difference between a pro and the rest of the field when the tires are still cold.
Mull has managed to climb into fifth, and he's now breathing down the neck of Constable Barry, with only 4/10 separating. Stokes is glued to the rear wing of Walters. That gap is down to just 3/10.
He's hunting for a way through, but Townsville is notorious for dirty air. If he stays too close in the twisty bits, he'll overheat those front tires.
That gap has stretched out to half a second. Now Walters has managed to give himself a tiny bit of breathing.
Stokes might have just peaked at third and lost his rhythm. He'll need to settle back into his line if he wants to recover that lost time.
Mall has found a way past Constable Barry, but there's absolutely nothing between them as they jostle for that fourth spot. Mall is holding the line, but Constable Barry is right back in the mix, shrinking that gap back down to just 0.2. Constable Barry is showing some serious pace now, putting that best lap time to good use as he stalks Mall.
He's keeping the pressure on, looking for a twitch from Mole under braking into the upcoming technical section.
That pressure has let up a bit. Mall has managed to pull 0.7 clear of Constable Barry now.
Looks like Constable Barry might have missed an apex there. That little bit of oversteer will cost you rhythm when you are trying to close a gap.
Neil is pushing hard through turn 9, trying to claw back that half-second deficit to David ahead.
He's keeping it tidy, but he needs to find a bit more aggression on the exit of this complex if he wants to bridge that gap.
Mall has found serious pace and is suddenly within 0.3 of Stokes as they hunt down the podium spots. Mall's losing a fraction of that momentum, the gap back out to 0.4 as Stokes just edges away.
It's that cat and mouse game. Mole's running in the wake of the car ahead, and in these temperatures, the front end just starts to wash out.
Neil is finding a rhythm out there, keeping the gap to David steady at half a second as they both look to keep their focus. That gap is ticked out by another 0.1. Neil's just not quite able to find the turn in speed to put David under any real threat right now. Mall is absolutely flying, setting his personal best through the turn 12 complex and putting himself right back in the slipstream of Stokes. Still locked at 0.4, Mall is pushing, but Stokes is holding the door shut through every apex.
He's working that steering wheel hard, but he's just stuck in that pocket of dirty air. It's killing his front grip when he needs to rotate the car for the exit.
Neil is on a charge. He's brought that gap down to just 0.3 as he looks to find a way past David.
He's finally nailed the mid-corner speed. If he can keep this momentum through the next sequence, he might just force a mistake.
A bit of a slip there from Neil, and he's handed that advantage right back, with the gap drifting out to 0.6 again. Huge news as we see Mall leapfrog Stokes into third, and now the pressure is completely on the other foot as he tries to defend that podium spot. Mall is holding strong in third, stretching that gap slightly to half a second as Stokes struggles to recover from losing the position. David Constable Barry is glued to the rear diffuser of Stokes now. That's just 0.1 of a second between them. That gap has ballooned back out to half a second. Looks like Stokes has successfully defended the line and forced David to back off.
He got a little greedy on the entry to that last corner, and paid for it with a bit of understeer. That's exactly how you lose a toe.
Neil is finding himself in no man's land a bit, with over a second now separating him from Stokes in that battle for fifth. Big shuffle in the order. Neil has managed to move up into fifth, and he's now pulling away from Stokes by over a second. Cormac is pushing hard through Boundary Street, keeping Stokes in his sights, as that gap sits just under a second. Cormac is staying within striking distance, but he just hasn't been able to make a dent in that 8/10 gap to Stokes yet.
He needs to stop looking at the car ahead and focus on the exit of this corner. If he keeps getting that mid-corner rotation wrong, he'll never get the run he needs to challenge.
Neil is carving through turn 6, trying to find every millisecond as he eyes up David just 6/10 ahead.
He's driving a very clean line, but he needs to be more aggressive on the throttle if he wants to close that gap before the time starts to run out.
That gap has drifted out to 8/10. Now Neil is just struggling to find the pace to stay on David's gearbox.
He's losing too much time in the mid-corner, just letting the car wash wide instead of pinning it to the apex.
Nadine is keeping it clean in 8th, but he's got over a second to bridge if he wants to get involved with Cormac ahead.
He's actually got the pace to be in this fight. He just needs to stop playing it safe and start trail braking a bit deeper into these street circuit corners.
Neil is putting in his best work of the day, setting a new personal best, but that gap to David has stretched out to 9/10.
It is frustrating, isn't it? You can be driving perfectly, but if the guy in front isn't making mistakes, you're just burning your rubber for nothing.
Total disaster for David Constable Barry. He has plummeted down the order, and Neil has inherited 4th place.
That is a massive swing. He must have had a major off or a mechanical failure to lose that much time and drop all the way to 8th.
Nadine has moved up to 7th, and he is putting serious heat on Cormac now, with only half a second between them.
He is finally looking confident, really leaning on those curves through the chicane to close the distance.
Nadine has just lost a bit of that momentum. The gap back out to 7/10 as he navigates the traffic.
He got a little too aggressive on the throttle on that last exit, just spinning up the rear tires and scrubbing off that precious drive.
Mull is pushing the limit of that car, but he's still got exactly 1 second to find if he wants to challenge Walters for second. Mull has found a second win. He's chopped that deficit in half, and now Walters really has a fight on his hands for second.
That is a massive gain. Mulla must have found a cleaner line through the technical sector, because he is absolutely flying compared to where he was a lap ago.
Nadine is practically sitting in Cormac's gearbox now, just 2/10 separating them as they head into the next heavy braking zone. Stokes is really finding his groove. Now he's chipped away at the gap and is sitting just 8/10 behind Neil Constable Barry. Stokes is maintaining that pressure, keeping it steady at 8/10, but he needs to start taking more risks if he wants to force Neil into a mistake before the clock runs out. Nadine's lost a bit of his earlier rhythm, the gap to Cormac, sliding back out to 4/10.
He's starting to overdrive the car. You can see him fighting a bit of snap oversteer every time he hits the apex.
It is a fascinating mix today. Seeing the Pro-Am and Am classes battling on this Townsville tarmac really shows how different their approaches to the same corners are.
You are not wrong. The pros are so much tidier, but some of the Am drivers are really brave on the late braking maneuvers, even if they lose it on the exit.
That drop-off for David Constable Barry earlier was a real shocker. He looked so settled before things went pear-shaped for him.
That is the cruelty of this circuit. You just have to clip one of these concrete walls a millimeter too hard, and your race is effectively over, regardless of your pace.
We have seen plenty of people trying to compensate for lost time by pushing harder, which usually just leads to more mistakes.
Exactly. It is a mental trap. The second you start overdriving, you stop listening to what the tires are telling you, and that is when the car starts fighting you back.
Nadine has managed to climb into 6th, and he is doing his best to stay right on the tail of Cormac, with 4/10ths between them. It is an absolute deadlock out there. Nadine just cannot seem to get any closer than that 4/10th window.
He is definitely feeling the heat now. I can see him locking the fronts every time he tries to trail brake into that hairpin.
Unbelievable to see Fovarg back in 10th after starting on pole, but he's fighting hard now to dismantle Wallstrom's defense with only 4/10ths in it. Fovarg has finally made the move stick, surging past Wallstrom to take 9th place.
He had to be patient, but that was a clean bit of racecraft. He forced Wallstrom to take a compromised line into the corner and just drove around the outside.
Naden is still glued to the back of Cormac, but he is going to need something special in these final 5 minutes to turn that 4/10th gap into a pass. Cormac has managed to stretch his legs a little bit, doubling that gap to 8/10ths as Nadine struggles to maintain his rhythm in the dirty air. Fovarg is right back on the tail of Wallstrom through turn 4, looking to undo the damage from that previous slow lap.
He looks rattled, honestly. That last tour was way off the pace, and he's fighting massive understeer every time he turns the wheel.
Wallstrom has found some breathing room, pushing that gap out to half a second as Fovarg just can't seem to find his rhythm.
He is overdriving the car on entry, Hal, and he is paying for it with a massive amount of tire scrub that is only going to get worse as we close in on the finish.
Mull has climbed all the way to 2nd and he's charging, putting the race leader Bodkin under real pressure with that 8/10th gap.
He is hunting for the win now, using every inch of the track to try and force Bodkin to defend the inside.
Nadine is right back in the fight, sitting just 2/10ths behind Cormac as we head into the final few minutes of the race. Cormac has just managed to squeeze out another 4/10ths, pushing that gap to 6/10ths as they weave through the final sector.
Nadine is just lacking that final bit of conviction on the brakes. He is backing out a fraction too early, and it is costing him the toe he needs to make a move.
Mull has found the front, and he is going to have to defend like his life depends on it, with Bodkin breathing down his neck. Mull has done a brilliant job to break the toe, extending that lead to over a second.
Bodkin must have made a mistake at the hairpin, because he has completely lost the rhythm that was keeping him in this fight.
Nadine is refusing to let this go, right back on the bumper of Cormac with only 3/10 between them.
He's finally finding some grip on the outside line, really leaning on the car to force a mistake as we wind down these final few minutes.
Fovarg is putting everything he has into chasing down Wallstrom, but that gap is staying stubborn at 4/10 as he struggles to recover from that slow previous tour. Fovarg has finally muscled his way past and into ninth. Wallstrom just couldn't hang on in those closing stages. It is still just 3/10 between them. Nadine is absolutely relentless, hunting down Cormac as we continue to tick away the final minutes. A tiny bit of breathing room for Cormac there, as that gap edges out by 1/10 of a second.
Nadine is really working the steering wheel, but you can see he's just lost that tiny bit of precision hitting his marks, and on this track, that's everything.
Wallstrom is desperately trying to stay in touch with Fovarg, but the gap is opening up to 6/10 now.
He's hitting the curbs too hard, Hal. That's just upsetting the balance of the car and killing his drive onto the back straight.
Cormac has just been shuffled back to 6th, Nadine finding a way through to take that spot.
He finally got a great run out of the final corner and just had more speed on the short sprint to the line.
Cormac is fading, losing another 2/10 to Nadine as he tries to find a response.
He's clearly struggling with the front end now. He's missed that apex twice in a row, and he's just going to let Nadine drive away if he keeps fighting the car like that.
Walters is sitting comfortably in 3rd, but he's got a big job to do if he wants to close that 1.6-second gap to Bodkin.
He needs to stop worrying about the car ahead and focus on his own rhythm. He's pushing too hard, and you can hear the engine note dipping in the slow corners.
Cormac is doing his best to keep the pressure on, holding steady at 7/10 behind Nadine as we wind down.
He's keeping it tidy this time, but he really needs to take a massive risk on the brakes if he wants to steal 5th back.
Absolutely nothing between them still. The gap remains at 7/10 as they enter this final stretch of the race. Walters is through turn 11, but that gap to 2nd place is stretching out toward 2 seconds now.
He's lost the rhythm, Hal. Every time he hits that mid-corner bump, the car is just jumping out of the groove, and he's losing those precious hundredths on every exit.
That gap is slipping away. It's out to over 2 seconds now for Walters.
He's settled into a pace that's just too slow to challenge the leaders. It looks like he's decided to bank this 3rd place rather than risk a mistake.
Cormac is doing all he can, but Nathan is just creeping away. That gap now sitting at 8/10 as we near the end. Stokes has found a massive gear. He's carved his way into 4th and is hunting down Walters for that final podium step.
He is driving the wheels off that car, Hal, and with that pace advantage, he's going to be on the back of Walters before the final flag.
Martin Moll is cruising towards a dominant finish here, with a massive 5-second cushion over Bodkin as he heads into these final few corners. Martin Moll takes the checkered flag. What an incredible drive from 8th on the grid to top step of the podium.
He didn't put a foot wrong once the field settled down. Just pure, clinical racecraft to pick them off one by one.
And Bodkin comes home in second, a solid performance after starting from the second row.
He'll be disappointed to miss out on the win, but he kept his head when the pressure was on, and that's a well-deserved trophy.
Walters rounds out our podium, holding on to third after a hard-fought race from 5th on the grid.
He had to fend off a lot of challengers in that final stint, but he stayed disciplined and kept the car out of the walls when it mattered most.
Stokes rounds out the top 4, followed by Naden, Cormac, and David Constable Barry, who's managed to salvage 7th after that earlier setback. Neil Constable Barry brings it home in 8th, with Fovar crossing the line in 9th to complete the final standings for our top 9 finishers. Wallstrom crosses the line to round out our top 10, concluding what has been a brilliant display of wheel-to-wheel action here at the Townsville Street Circuit. 7 minutes left on the clock, and Sten Wallstrom is still sitting in the pits, which is a bit of a head-scratcher this late in the session.
Constable Barry is finally heading through T12, but we are still waiting on a representative lap from him with under 7 minutes to go.
Both Constable Berries are taking their sweet time getting a banker lap on the board, and with only 6 minutes left, they're really squeezing their own window here.
Bodkin is just now rolling out of T2, but he's leaving it awfully late to find any rhythm with just over 5 minutes on the clock.
David Constable Berry just dropped a 1:13 flat to snatch the top spot, and he is already pushing hard through T1 to build on that gap.
Wallstrom is putting in work through T10, but he's still nearly a second back from David's benchmark as the clock ticks down.
Neil is finally out there in the T12 section, though he's leaving himself virtually no time to get into a groove.
He's going to need an absolute flyer right out of the box because there's no margin for error with under 4 minutes remaining.
David's still setting the pace, looking remarkably composed as he threads that car through TA to defend his lead. Constable Barry is keeping us waiting. Still nothing on the board with 8 minutes left to play with. Walters is still lingering in the pits while the rest of the field puts laps in.
He might be waiting for the track to rubber in, but he's burning through time he could use to get a feel for the balance.
Constable Barry is finally heading out, rolling through T13 now.
About time. He needs to stop faffing and get some heat into those tires before the session window shuts.
Still silence from the Walters garage, and the clock is ticking down under 7 minutes now.
He's leaving it late. If he's banking on a clear track for a flyer, he's cutting his margin for error to 0.
Bodkin is finding some serious rhythm through T3, holding that top spot with a 1 minute 12 seconds and 6 milliseconds. The engines are revving up, and the drivers are ready to hit the gas pedal for this qualifying session at Townsville Street Circuit. 5 minutes, 48 left, and we are still waiting to see Chris Stokes head out of the pits.
Fovargi is cutting it fine, still hasn't clocked a time with barely 5 minutes on the clock.
Nathan's still in the garage as we approach the 4-minute mark. He's leaving himself a very small window to get a banker lap in.
Maul is gambling on track temperature or clear air, but waiting until under 5 minutes to go is a massive risk if he hits traffic.
Martin Mall finally breaks his silence and goes straight to the top of the board with a 1 minute 12 seconds and 2 milliseconds.
Constable Barry is mid-lap. Let's see if he can pull some time out of that MK1 Cortina.
Cormac is pushing hard on his second flyer, looking to climb out of that 6th place spot.
Constable Barry is finding a bit more pace. He's up about a 10th and a half on his previous best.
Mall is showing his hand, already looking to shave even more time off that benchmark.
He's keeping it tidy through T7. If he maintains this rhythm, he's going to be very hard to beat today.
Walters is finding speed through the T11 complex. He's up over a 10th right now.
He needs to be careful not to push too hard on the exit there. That's where you lose the time you just fought for.
That's a clean jump for Walters. Slots him into 3rd with that 1 minute 12 seconds and 7 milliseconds.
Great recovery. That puts him right in the mix with the leaders as we head into the final 2 minutes.
Nadine's lighting up the timing screen through Boundary Street, finding a couple of tenths as he tries to break into the top 8.
Walters is on a charge. He's already found nearly 2 tenths, which would put him right back in the fight for the front row.
Constable Barry is pushing the limits at T9. He's up another 10th as he tries to climb out of the bottom half of the field.
Bodkin's really found something in this second run. 4 tenths up through T10 is a huge gain at this stage of the session.
Constable Barry is throwing everything at it through Boundary Street to try and move up that grid.
He needs this to stick, though. He's flirting with the track limits in those final corners.
Bodkin is flying. He's nearly half a second up as he hits the Boundary Street section.
He's absolutely hooked up on this lap. If he keeps this composure through the final turn, he's going to be a major mover.
David Constable Barry is finding a little bit more time here, looking to apply some weight pressure on the front runners.
He's keeping it clean, but with less than 30 seconds left, he's got to commit to every apex on this final sector.
Cormac is just shy of a 10th up, but with 14 seconds on the clock, this is likely his absolute final chance to improve his starting position.
Cormac couldn't find the improvement he needed there. He's stuck in 7th as the final runners finish their laps.
Wallstrom is putting in a massive effort through Boundary Street, but he's got an uphill battle if he wants to move up from the back of the pack. 14 knots of wind whipping down the straight here in Townsville is going to make these cars a handful under braking. Phil Bodkin is looking ice cool in that top spot, but leading the pack into the first turn here is a massive test for an AM driver.
He better be careful with his throttle application. With this wind, that Formula 4 car will be dancing all over the road on cold tires.
Chris Stokes, sitting in P3, looking to pounce on the front row as soon as the lights go out.
He's a pro for a reason. He'll be watching Bodkin's rear end closely, waiting for that twitch in the wind to find his opening.
Constable Barry lines up fourth, right in the thick of it between the hungry pro and AM runners.
Walters is going to have to keep his head on a swivel from row 3. He's got those pro cars breathing down his neck immediately.
Dominic Fovarg rounds out the top 6, and he is going to want to stay glued to the back of the guys ahead if he wants to tow off the start.
6th is a tricky place to be. You get all the turbulence from the front runners without being able to dictate your own line through that initial sweep.
Cormac is tucked back in 8th, but with that wind gusting, he only needs one mistake from the leaders to find himself in the mix. Wallstrom sits in 9th, needing a clean getaway to avoid getting swallowed up by the mid-pack congestion.
He needs to focus on his own braking points and ignore the chaos unfolding ahead of him.
Rounding out the top 10, Ben Naden has a long road ahead if he wants to climb the order on this tight Townsville layout. And they are off. A clean start for Bodkin, but Stokes is already looking for a gap on the inside. Bodkin has managed to hold the line perfectly through the opening complex, keeping his nose ahead of the pack.
He's done well to consolidate that lead, but keep an eye on his exits. He's pushing hard to build a gap before the DRS zones open.
Fovarg is holding firm in 6th, though he's got a train of cars right behind him, looking to capitalize on any slip-up.
He needs to focus on his own rhythm. If he starts looking in his mirrors too much, he'll compromise his turn-in and lose that gap.
Maul is glued to the back of the leader, showing absolute discipline through the first few corners. Maul has absolutely latched onto Bodkin's gearbox. That gap is down to just 0.3 as they navigate this sector.
Bodkin is struggling to break the toe, and if Maul can stay this close through the next sequence, he's going to have a serious look at the lead.
Fovarg is right in the hunt here, sitting just 0.4 behind Walters as they charge through the opening lap.
He's keeping it tidy, but he needs to get a move on if he wants to use that slipstream to challenge for 5th before the field settles into a rhythm.
Fovarg has snatched 5th away from Walters. A sharp bit of wheel-to-wheel work, and he's now ahead, leaving Walters to scramble for grip in his wake. Walters has fought back, reclaiming the spot and forcing Fovarg to tuck back in behind with a 3/10 deficit. Fovarg is putting everything he's got into this, pulling that gap down to 2/10 as they hunt down the next corner.
He's really testing the limits of the car here, deep into the braking zone, but he needs to make sure he doesn't hit his front tires this early in the race.
Walters has managed to breathe a tiny bit of life into that gap, pushing it out to 3/10 now.
Fovarg probably just had a micro lockup or a slightly messy exit. At this pace, that's all it takes to lose a car length.
Constable Barry is right on the tail of Mole, just 3/10 off third place and looking for a way to break into the podium spots. That is a massive gain from Constable Barry. He has muscled his way past Mole and is now hunting down the leaders from third. Fovarg is looking incredibly sharp through T8, glued to the gearbox of Walters, and clearly hunting that fourth position. Walters has defended well through the complex, extending that cushion just enough to force Fovarg to reset his attack.
It's a frustrating game of cat and mouse. Fovarg is losing just enough time in the mid-corner phase to lose his shot at a proper lunge.
Constable Barry is absolutely putting the heat on Mole now, hovering just 2/10 behind him as they hunt down the leaders.
He's finding a lot of grip on the exit, but he's got to manage that front left tire. He's been pushing it hard to stay in this fight.
Constable Barry has done it. He's snatched P2 away from Mole in a clean bit of driving, though he's still got that car right in his mirrors. These RSS4s are proving to be quite the handful in these Townsville conditions, aren't they?
Absolutely. And the wind is just throwing a spanner in the works for everyone. It's changing the aero balance corner by corner.
It really separates the drivers who are just reading the track from the ones who can actually feel the shift in the car.
You're spot on. That's exactly where my racing background kicks in. You're not just driving the circuit. You're constantly recalibrating your inputs.
I can only imagine the mental fatigue of trying to maintain that focus while defending against someone like Mole or Constable Barry.
It's relentless, and seeing the field this tightly packed only confirms that the smallest lapse in concentration will see you lose a position in an instant.
Walters is working hard through the Boundary Street section, trying to close that 4/10 gap to Wallstrom ahead of him.
Yellow flag, safety car's out.
The safety car is out on track, and that's going to bunch the field back up, just as we were finding a rhythm.
That's a huge shame, but necessary. The marshals need to clear that incident safely before we can go back to racing.
Well, this certainly throws a curveball into the strategy for the frontrunners.
It's the worst-case scenario for someone like Bodkin, who's been fighting tooth and nail to keep that gap to the pack.
He had a decent cushion, and now it's all vanished in a heartbeat, thanks to the caution.
That's just the nature of street circuits. One mistake from someone back in the field, and the whole advantage disappears.
It's a perfect opportunity for the guys behind to reset, cool their tires, and take a breath before the restart.
True, but it's a mental reset, too. You have to switch from pure attack mode back into disciplined, pace-saving driving under the yellow.
The safety car is staying out for another lap, and the teams are likely using this time to manage their tire temperatures. It's vital they don't let those pressures drop too low, or the restart is going to be a nightmare for grip.
You're right, and for the leaders, it's about keeping the engine and gearbox temps within that window without cooking the brakes behind the safety car. I've been in the cockpit during these slow periods. You find yourself constantly weaving, just trying to keep the heat in the sidewalls so you don't slide off at the green flag.
It is fascinating to see how the field bunches up like this, completely resetting the pecking order. We have seen some incredible aggression from the Pro and Pro-Am drivers today. I'm particularly impressed by how Constable Barry has managed to slice his way through the traffic. He really seems to have found a setup that works well with this track surface. Though the AM-class drivers are doing a stand-up job holding their own against the experienced racers, this safety car period really gives them a chance to regroup, though I'm sure they are itching to get back to full speed.
You are right about the traffic, but honestly, this pause is a double-edged sword for them. In my experience, when you have a rhythm and you are forced to slow down, you can lose that razor-sharp focus. You go from being at one with the car to suddenly questioning your tire pressures and brake bias. It is almost more stressful to sit under the safety car than it is to be wheel-to-wheel in the braking zones. I'm looking at Bodkin's onboard, and he looks a bit fidgety. He knows everyone behind is just waiting for that green light. He has the pressure of the leader's restart, and that is never an easy spot to be in, regardless of experience.
The marshals are clearing the debris from that incident now, so we should be getting back to green flag racing any moment.
Drivers will be checking their mirrors constantly, trying to judge exactly when Bodkin is going to hammer the throttle.
It is almost eerie how quiet it gets on the radio during these safety car periods. The teams usually go dead silent to let the driver find their own mental space. I have always wondered what goes through a driver's head in those few minutes. Are they running through a checklist or just trying to stay calm? I imagine they are checking their fuel maps and brake bias one last time. It really is the calm before the storm, isn't it?
Oh, it is anything but calm, believe me.
Safety car
Your
in
heart rate
this
doesn't
lap.
actually drop. You are constantly glancing at the telemetry, looking at oil temps, and checking your mirrors. When I raced, I would treat those laps like a meditation session, focusing entirely on my breathing. If you let your mind wander, that is exactly when you clip a curb on the restart. The adrenaline is still there, just simmering, waiting for that signal to jump back into the fight. Bodkin better keep that rhythm steady, because the pack is going to swarm him the second the lights go out.
The safety car lights are off, and Bodkin is slowing the pack down, waiting for the perfect moment to bolt as we go back to green. Walters hasn't been able to make an impression on the gap since the restart, and it's actually
ready.
stretched out
Safety
to 6
car's
tenths.
clear. Green, 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 let's go.
Mull is right on the gearbox of Constable Barry, just a tenth, separating them as they look to claw their way back up the order. Mull has pulled off a clean move, forcing his way past Constable Barry and into ninth as he continues this charge through the grid. That was short-lived. Constable Barry has fought straight back to reclaim the spot, leaving Mull scrambling to find another opening. Fovarg is absolutely glued to the back of Stokes, just 2 tenths off the lead, and looking like he's ready to make a move at any second.
He's got the pace, but that last lap was a bit messy, likely due to all that dirty air swirling around in the front of the pack.
It seems like Fovarg is struggling. They are not able to maintain their pace. Mull is pushing hard through T13, trying to close down that 4/10 gap to Bodkin ahead of him.
He needs to be careful not to overdrive the car in this section. You can see him fighting a bit of understeer as he tries to keep the pressure on.
Mull has shaved that gap down to 2 tenths now. He is absolutely hounding Bodkin for that 8th spot. Constable Barry is keeping the pressure on, sitting just 4 tenths back from Fovarg as they navigate the sector. Constable Barry has tightened the screws significantly. That gap is now just a single tenth, and he is looking for a way around the outside. Walters is sitting in fourth, and with a half-second gap to Constable Barry, he needs to find some extra pace if he wants to join that podium battle.
He's been playing it safe, but at this stage of the race, you have to start taking risks, or you'll just be a spectator to the fight ahead.
Ben Nadine is keeping a watchful eye on Walters, just 6/10 behind as they head into the latter stages of this race.
He's finding a great rhythm, but he needs to bridge that gap quickly if he's going to stand a chance at a top 4 finish.
Naden's put his head down and clawed back 2/10 on Walters, bringing the gap down to 4/10 as they continue to chase. Bovarg is putting a real squeeze on Constable Barry now, just 3/10 back and looking desperate to reclaim that second spot. Bovarg must have had a slight moment through that last section, as Constable Barry has managed to extend his lead out to 4/10 again. Naden is practically glued to the bumper of Walters now. That gap is down to just a 10th as they sweep through the sector.
He is in the perfect spot to capitalize on a mistake, but he needs to avoid getting too eager and cooking those front tires before the final push.
Nadine has absolutely sent it down the inside and snatched fourth away, though Walters is already right back in his mirrors trying to retaliate. Walters has fought back hard, reclaiming the position and leaving Nadine to chase again with a 2/10 deficit. Naden has lost a bit of momentum through T9, and that gap to Walters has grown back out to 6/10.
He really pushed his luck on that previous attempt, and now he's paying the price with a bit of a lack of drive on the exit.
Nadine has managed to claw back a 10th through that sequence, bringing the gap down to 5/10 as we enter the closing stages.
He's finding his feet again, but with only 5 minutes left, he needs to stop trading tenths and make a definitive move.
Bovarg is putting everything on the line, just 1/10 separating him and Constable Barry as they fight for second. Constable Barry has managed to find just a little more breathing room, stretching that gap back out to 2/10.
It looks like Bovarg might have gone a bit wide on the apex of the last turn, and at this level, that's all it takes to lose the toe.
Bodkin is locked onto the back of Cormac, just 3/10 back and looking to salvage a strong finish from this 7th position. Bodkin has made the move stick and vaulted into 6th, leaving Cormac to deal with the frustration of losing that spot.
That was a clinical overtake. Bodkin timed his run perfectly coming out of the previous complex to capitalize on that gap.
Cormac needs to watch his mirrors. He has a half-second cushion over Neil Constable Barry, but that car behind is starting to look awfully big. Cormac has managed to keep it tidy and extend that lead slightly, putting another 10th of a second between himself and Neil Constable Barry. Neil Constable Barry is clearly finding some late race pace, slicing that gap to Cormac down to 4/10 as they hunt for 7th. That gap has stretched back out to 5/10. It looks like he's lost that initial surge of momentum.
It's the typical frustration of being in dirty air. Just when you think you've got them, the front end washout hits and you have to back off again.
Fovarg is losing touch with second place. That gap to Constable Barry has drifted out to 6/10.
He's been working those tires far too hard, and you can see the car starting to slide just a fraction more on every turn-in.
Neil Constable Barry is working through T2 with half a second still to find if he wants to challenge Cormac for 7th. Stalemate at the moment. He's still locked half a second back from Cormac despite the persistent pressure.
He needs to change his line through that technical complex if he wants to force a mistake, because currently, he's just sitting in the wake.
That gap continues to widen. Fovarg is now 7/10 adrift, and the podium battle is starting to look a bit processional for him. Fovarg has found a second win, reeling Constable Barry back in to just 5/10.
That is much better. He's stopped forcing the car and is letting the chassis work for him again. He's right back in the fight.
Neil is leaning on the back of Cormac again, closing to within 4/10 as they hit this final stretch.
He is being much more patient with his braking points this time around, setting up for a move that might actually stick.
Fovarg is putting in a massive effort, but he's dropped back to 6/10, and with the clock winding down, he needs a miracle to get on terms with Constable Barry. Fovarg has absolutely found some pace, chopping that deficit in half to sit just 3/10 behind in the closing stages. That gap has ballooned out to 8/10 for Neil. He's lost significant ground to Cormac in the last few corners. It's holding steady at 8/10. Neil just can't seem to find the traction he needs to get back on terms with Cormac. Fovarg is absolutely breathing down his neck, just 2/10 in it as they hunt for that second place trophy.
He's absolutely on the limit of the car now. That last lap was his fastest of the race, which tells you he's found a new level of desperation.
It remains a stalemate at 2/10. Fovarg is applying all the pressure he can, but Constable Barry is defending his line with absolute precision. Maul is pushing hard in 9th, just 3/10 off the back of Neil Constable Barry as they navigate this final sector.
He's been setting some quick times, but he's got to make sure he doesn't over-rotate the car trying to force that gap closed.
Constable Barry is slipping back to 4/10 behind Fovarg, who seems to have found a much better rhythm through these technical sections. That gap has stretched to half a second. Constable Barry is really struggling to stay in touch with Fovarg's pace now.
He's definitely battling understeer. You can see it in how early he's having to lift off the throttle before the corner even begins.
Chris Stokes is looking untouchable at the front, cruising toward the line with a comfortable 2.5-second cushion.
He's played a masterclass today. He kept his cool, managed the traffic, and has left Fovar with far too much work to do in these final seconds.
Chris Stokes takes the checkered flag, a brilliant drive from third on the grid to dominate this final stretch and secure the win here in Townsville. Dominic Fovar brings it home in second. What a fantastic recovery from a mid-pack start to climb all the way to the podium.
He really found his groove. After that mid-race battle, managed his pace perfectly to hold off the late pressure and secure that spot.
And David Constable-Berry completes the podium, holding on for a well-deserved third after being right in the thick of that intense battle for most of the race. Walters, Nadine, Bodkin, and Moll round out the top 7, and honestly, each of them has been involved in some of the tightest scraps I've seen all season.
It was a proper street fight out there, and to keep these cars in one piece through to the finish is a credit to every single one of them.
Cormac, Neal, Constable-Berry, and Wallstrom cross the line to round out our top 10 finishers.
A gritty performance from those three to stay in the hunt until the very end, especially with the wind levels we saw earlier today.